Good afternoon, or evening, or morning, or midnight, wherever the hell you might be in the world. I'm in Mushtari Park here in Tbilisi, the capital city of the country of Georgia, and was watching one of the best photographers in the world last night, live coaching. Actually, it wasn't live stream; it was recorded live stream, and she's based in Los Angeles. But she originally did most of her business and her work in New Zealand, a country that I spent 45 days in back in 2005. So, but it's really exciting. It's really cool to listen to this particular teacher, Sue Bryce Education, talk about her passion, her love, and her coaching, her teaching, her education. It's really cool, because it just done another photography session. Was photographing Anano Fativa, and you could say that her mother and her father, that's Tata and Andre, and well, all three of them, the artistic directors of that photo shoot. It's very interesting that when you hear another photographer speak, especially someone with Sue's experience and that level of expertise and that kind of passion about it, it's just it's of great value if you're a photographer. But she's a wonderful life coach as well. It's just incredible what I'm learning from Sue Bryce Education, and then getting out and doing something with photography when I can. That's a big problem with a lot of the photographers right now. It's acknowledged that, you know, there's a lot that can't be done in the period that we're in terms of the global pandemic. But people are adapting to that and doing what they can in terms of their hobbies, their part-time or full-time work pursuits, passions, art, businesses, whatever level or avenues that they have involved in this particular topic in their lives, or are pursuing in their lives. That's important. And it helps when you are connecting with other people that share some of that or all of that, or whether it's in real life or whether it's online. It really helps. There continues to be successes in terms of, you know, families' adaptation to things in terms of this time back at home, both in terms of their personal lives and then in their professional lives. All of them are professionals, even though one is retired, continues with you know, the guide service, but they are all professionals. And I tell them, you know, I'm very proud of my family, and we've made films together, and one of the greatest projects was the building project. And I was talking to Scott in chat today, answering his chat to me last night. He's the sales manager and our support on the building project back in October 2016, where my father and I and friends and family, including Chad Phillips and Mike Vollmer, whether it was a day, half a day, or whether it was a couple of days, for me and my father and my brother, it was 2 full weeks that we got the frame of the steel frame building. I think 30 by 60 or 30 by 70. We got it erected and put together in terms of the frame in 2 weeks. And it's exactly what we planned. So we've done about 6 months worth of research on that, though. I was the primary one, and then my father did some of the legwork over there. What had happened was my mother and uncle sat me down at what was Angie Rose's place, I believe. I'm trying to remember. The cafe before the one I think she's still running the cafe now. They've got great food. They really do. They were superb. And I think now she's doing another cafe there. I don't know if it's Bud's Cafe or another one. But anyway, back then it was the one that she had before that. So uncle and I My mom sat down at the table and they said, we want you to research this and want you to get this together so we can get this going. Jason and I, my brother, had talked about it for years, a couple of years. And so what became talk and serious talk about putting together a steel frame building became reality. And he got out of that house on Sharp Street, now is a rental house. And I got a photo of my dad the other day. He's over there putting in a counter with my brother. A new kitchen counter. It's going to be great. Dad always does incredible customized work. Any kind of remodeling or reconstruction. He's done that many, many times on many houses over the years. It's not his full-time work, but it is if he makes it so, if he decides to take on, do that kind of project. But so I got this pretty cool photo of my father putting in the countertop there. And maybe I'll post it later, I don't know. Anyway, it was kind of funny, but it was cool though, very cool. And there's so much innovations on the home that separately on a different topic, which is actually my brother and my mom on the Highland Home for Seniors. They've done so many new innovations and improvements to the actual facility. The actual home. It's a residential home. It's a nursing care for elderly and for senior citizens. And there's so many. The roof has been redone within the last year or so. The deck has been completely reconstructed from ground up. Both decks. The floors have been replaced. There may be more of that going on, which is routine, but there's new decor. There's been rooms painted. It's just like everything has been renewed, everything. And I remember one year I was there, we were planting flowers outside. It was Terry and my mom and I, and there was a flower bed on the side of the building. But in total, I'm very proud. I'm very fortunate to have such a great mother and father and brother that have worked so skillfully and so long and so hard on their professional level, on their professions. And so, as my mom says, she's approaching her decision about retirement. It's just like, somebody should write up all that she's accomplished, all that she's done. Jason mentioned years ago, this is like 4 or 5 years ago maybe, he had cared for at least, they counted it up, at least 300 elderly persons at that time. 300, my brother, personal care in terms of all that's involved with that. And it's just incredible. So I was happy, as I mentioned in another video and posted on Facebook, that we were able to do another round of research for Mom and get things lined up so that she could just pop in with a quick phone call and get everything, after I got everything lined up in terms of the research. That doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's something that I'm very, very good at. And I was the administrative assistant for Vanderpool Care Incorporated, which is absolutely unconnected to them. And that was back in 2000. And so, that's what I've done, and that's what I trained to do. When I took education, that was my focus, and I kind of designed it myself, a year in entrepreneurship, a year in speech communications, 2 years there at Missouri Valley College, or about a year and a half actually there on the basics of, just general education, history, science, math, all these things. But the main focus that I went in for was entrepreneurship, which I think is much better than an average business degree, and then speech communication, which I think is a great strength to have in almost any business. So, very happy for that. I talked to my uncle last week, Uncle Tom, and he knew more about, or he knew more about some things than most anyone would ever know about the situation over here. It's always been amazing what he knows about what's happening overseas in terms of geopolitics. And he knew exactly the situation with what was happening with Georgia and Russia, and he had known these things. Very well read, very well read. And he's been a farmer, and the railroad, he worked for the railroad most all his life. He's still farming. Cattle ranching as well now for some years. And so it was pretty amazing when he knew what I had known for many years. You know, the perestroika deception, which was a book written, also New Lies for Old, by Anatoly Golitsyn, who was a KGB strategist who actually helped write the plan when he was still in Ukraine before defecting to the West. And very knowledgeable about that plan. In fact, one of those books that he wrote was really rather very predictive, because they did follow a plan, and he helped write the plan. And 5 years later, after he had wrote that book, like 94% of the predictions had come to pass, including the fall of the Berlin Wall. So somehow my uncle knew all about that, and when he made it in one sentence, what I just said in about 3 or 4 sentences, he knew the right to the point and summed it up in one sentence. And I'm like, wow, you know, yeah, you know about that, huh? That's talked about in the book, The Perestroika Deception. Anatoly Golitsyn. And there's a further book, a memorandum, the CIA, Anatoly Golitsyn, Ukrainian defector to the West, former KGB strategist, helped write the plan. But I mean, it's so predictive. You know, it's like when I actually called and talked to former MI6, or the British intelligence agent who was a personal advisor to the Queen of England, Dr. John Coleman. He put out many monographs, and I had been reading and watching some of his material over the many years ago. I haven't for a long time, but there was a period of time when I researched all these kinds of things, and he had like 650 geopolitical predictions, and he had like a 95 or 97 accuracy rate on prediction on geopolitical events as well, within a 5-year period. I mean, that's just amazing. Because once again, very many things go to plan, and these kinds of things are chalked up as conspiracy theory or whatever. And that's why I like, there's a section, I think, where Billy Edward Albert Meyer in the contact notes, this thing is, you know, FIGU, F-I-G-U, out of Switzerland, this kind of thing is addressed. And I think there's a whole list of like, okay, well, here's things that are questionable in terms of whether they're conspiracy theory or whether they're fact, whether they're actual truth, in terms of what this contact note, or this publication that was put out by FIGU on Billy Meyer. And so there was a whole list of things, and there were some things that were stated in that publication as just not true. There's no truth to it all. And then there were other things that were actually quite true that were labeled as, you know, conspiracy theory. So there's always the value in what is truthful, I think, even though it's not always popular or feel-good kind of thing. But that's the kind of research that I'd done back then, just calling it, you know, Stan Deyo, another author who was out of Australia. In particular, I was researching, because he was a computer programmer, and I think involved in some sort of intelligence or investigative work. And I just called Stan on the phone, and I talked to him, because he had talked about the cashless system, what they called the Beast system, or the 666 system. And I wanted to know if it was, how much of that was bullshit or not, what he had written on and talked about on it. And he just openly talked to me on the phone. I talked to Ted Gunderson one time over the phone from Kiev. I was researching the whole, I think then it was the missing children thing, and it was because there was like a huge number that were missing every year in the United States. And he was a former director of the FBI, and I think he was out of Los Angeles or Chicago. Anybody can look up Ted Gunderson, but I had actually talked to him from Kiev. And again, to get some idea of like what that was all about, what was going on. And then I had talked several times to, well, just live on the air, calling into the show by John Moore, the Liberty Man. And I would do that from here in Tbilisi. I'd done it from Panama, and that's back when I was with Yulia, and we'd be working on stuff on the computer, doing internet work, computer work, whatever, eBay and all that. And then we would listen to different things, music, radio shows, whatever, and I would call in and make a comment or ask a question of John Moore. John Moore's a former military intelligence officer, and so I had called him also back in 2003 when I was helping with a very short period of time, like about a month, 2 months, with a situation there, and he told me the straight story on all that. And so, but yeah, he's a private investigator, confidential informant. He works murder and drug cases within the Missouri court systems for private clients. That's John Moore. So I had done a lot. I just didn't get on the internet and only read or watch videos or listen to talk radio and participate, which I did, or in forums or whatever. I actually got on the phone and called these people, and we talked, and I would get direct. In fact, I talked to Sherman Skolnick before, I think he's passed away. He was in a wheelchair, but he was an incredible investigative journalist. So I had talked to Sherman Skolnick, and we had a brief conversation, but I wanted to confirm, you know, over the phone, some of the shocking points of his research that he published. And I mean, I just had to not just get it from what they published and were attributed for in terms of the article. I had to get it from them directly. I didn't want to just trust what they put out there. I wanted to hear them and talk to them about that on the phone. So I actually did this type of my own research on these guys, and it's interesting because all of them have a background of either intelligence, U.S. military intelligence, British intelligence, or in one case probably Australian, maybe, or anybody can look up Stan Deyo and find out his profile, his autobiography, but also former FBI director. So all these people that have written and put things out there I've talked to them all briefly, more or less, and in the case of John Moore, several times by phone, and trying to get the validity or the truth, or just, you know, like face to face, or not face to face, but over the phone, validation of what they were talking about or published about or wrote about or gave seminars on or presentations on, because I really, really wanted to verify the validity of that information. So that's something that I'd done for years. So sometimes when people come, they used to come onto my Facebook and talk about this or that, or in chat or in real life tell me I need to go research this or that. It's like, look, I've already been down this road. I've already checked. I've already come to conclude things about, you know, about religion or about other certain specific topics, because I've talked about FIGU, F-I-G-U, and Michael Horn, American media representative for the Billy Edward Albert Meyer case or story in America, who continues to publish their information out of Switzerland, and it's accurate weeks, months, years in advance of what our medical scientists here on Earth, or scientists or archaeologists or whoever, whatever, may finally confirm only much, much, much later what Billy published first, what FIGU, F-I-G, published first, F-I-G-U, out of Switzerland, FIGU. So that's why one of the times I had traveled into Europe, I finally got over to Switzerland. I finally had even voluntarily did some work there a couple times, and it's one of the most important trips I ever made, because once again I was investigating, I was researching, I was finding out, you know, what's true, what's not true. Like, and I met Billy on both visits. I was fortunate to have had that opportunity or that experience. But the process of that for me was the people that also research it and study it, and you know, and they've been. I mean, I've learned a lot just from like there's a guy, Alex, on my Facebook, who passed over the 77 meditations to me, and I'm like, oh wow. And he's, how much he's aware of it or not, he's one of the most empathic, intuitive people I've ever chatted with on Facebook that doesn't call themselves a psychic or an empath or something like that. That guy is incredibly empathic, and I told him something like that when we did chat. But he passed along the 77 meditative sentences, you know, the high and clear meditation, the 77 sentences, that was from the Meyer case. I think someone else suggested or pointed out the concentration focused meditation exercises, and I think David Seaton even has a video up on the YouTube about that, or a specific to that 1 or 2 part video. But I had read the contact notes about that and went with that, and I'm in almost the 5th year. It'll be the 5th year I've practiced the concentration focused meditation exercises 99% of the time, every day, since January 11th, 2016, and I've stuck with it. So when it comes to January 11th, 2021, I'll have done that for 5 years. Most important thing I've ever done. So that's one of the things that I learned from FIGU, F-I-G-U, and then going there and seeing it and the reality, and participating once in the Salome Peace meditation, at least once. It was on a Saturday, I believe. And doing volunteer work there, whether it was snapping beans in the kitchen from the garden, whether it was just cleaning out the like the drain systems around, or sweeping the place around there, or going out and picking up brush and burning the brush in a pile like you do at farm work, or whether it was going down into the forest and cleaning up the forest that they had acquired, because there's going to be a need for an expansion onto that property as the climatic changes come in some cases suddenly, violently, and the change to the jet stream. The jet stream will be touching down, or the winds, the high winds, 200 to 300 miles per hour. They planted a windbreak out there. There was a guy I talked to who'd been a scientist for IBM in Japan for 12 years, and there he was as a core group member, I believe, putting the protective gear on and going down there and weed eating and caring for the trees on the hillside that was being grown for the windbreak that they're going to need to protect them from the high winds. That's why I've advised the family, and they all paid attention. They may not have windbreaks planted, but they've got things in place to deal with these things that are coming, and they've already come in some cases, and in some places have experienced it more or less, these dramatic extremes in climatic changes. And so and going there and verifying that and getting the reality of that, even though it's far outside of most people's box or awareness or limited way of thinking or understanding or awareness. In some cases, everybody's different in these ways, but I did my research. I went there. I spent the money on train tickets or plane tickets or both, and I traveled, and I went, and I studied, and I researched, and I met people, and I talked with people, and I read and studied and watched videos and listened to audios and radio shows and guests and interviews and other people and exchanged information. And I went there and I found out for myself. And the most valuable, but sometimes the simplest of things, but sometimes in simplicity, the differences between the truthful, basic framework of a meditation exercise, for example, or of some information, whether it's an article of 2 paragraphs or a book of 30 chapters, or 12 volumes, for example, whatever it is. There's a saying, I think, that from that same material, that it boils down to the value of it is the truthfulness of it. And it also helps, of course, to be applicable in terms of a practical application, a realistically useful truth or useful, practically effective exercise. And that's what I got from FIGU. That's exactly what I got. And it's not over. I mean, there's areas of my life, my thinking, and so on, that I will work on, hopefully. That's the intention, that's the plan, that's the wish, the inspiration, right, that I have for the rest of the days that I'm on this earth, in this incarnation, in this go at it this time around, in this personality. But the fact that I went there, the fact that I got introduced to it, the fact that I went there more than once, the fact that I even put in the volunteer work there, that was the most important trip I could make of a lifetime. There's no other, that's number one. And I've had the ability to go anywhere, anytime, any place in the world. for 15 years. And that's pretty much everywhere, actually, especially if you want to apply as a journalist to go in somewhere, or a photographer. You pretty much can go almost anywhere on the planet. I mean, even the most difficult places to get a visa, you can almost get in anywhere. So, I mean, I've had that option, and I can still say that I had plans in this month to hope to go back to Figu in Switzerland. That's not going to be possible now. This is the month that I had planned on it, and it's a really, really great month for me. I'm an astrologer, and I'm like, oh wow. But it's also, there's a couple of transits that make it, there's going to be some things that, like this, I can't go to Switzerland, I can't go back to Figu. I wanted to go back so bad. And this other documentary filmmaker made this excellent, professional documentary film there on Switzerland, the Figu. And I just wanted to get back there so bad, but not possible right now. But this is the time I would have wanted to go back, especially when we learned about the COVID-19 pandemic and the travel restrictions. In fact, I can't go to Switzerland at all, let alone into the Silver Star Semjaze Center. They're not going to accept visitors, of course, for however long it takes to be safe from the risk of that comes from the global pandemic, COVID-19. But I can't even go to Switzerland right now. But this is what I had planned for this month at this very time. I want to be in Switzerland. I want to return. I want to see how Billy's doing, but not really that so much as just the fact, because that's not what this is actually all about. I mean, it is, but it's not. It's really about the teachings. It's about the treasure. The guardian of the treasure, the writings, the books, the authentic, original German writing and books, and some of them have been translated into other languages, including English in some cases. But there's an that's what I want. But I've already been there twice too. But so it's been really helpful to communicate and exchange with others online that are actively trying to learn, grow, or debate or discuss that case. I was going to say cuss. That's a kind of a, I don't know if that's a profanity or an actual English word. I'd have to look that up to see if that's something that's officially in the dictionary versus a slang, cuss. Because when you think of cuss words, you think of profanity, and a lot of profanity is labeled, well, it's labeled as slang, or a lot of it is, and that gets interesting in wordplay and word etymology, right? Like the history of, like, where did that come from, and what is that in terms of classification? Because I'm not an English teacher, though I excelled at every English course I ever took. I was in advanced placement classes with that, but that doesn't make me an expert on it at all. It just means I've always been asked to move up in college or even in high school to advanced classes for those of us that were a little bit advanced or gifted in that or other areas. For me, it was all in the high school courses, most of them in. So about the discussion or cussing. Now, I mean, when you come onto this information, you can make you pretty angry in the beginning, because you begin to realize how much you've been lied to. It's kind of like being a child and you come of age at a certain point in your youth or in your teen years, and you're like, what? Santa Claus is... You mean when we were standing out there waiting, looking up in the sky for the Santa Claus's sleigh, in the Russian terms it would be like Father Frost. You know, we're out there, we're looking for Santa Claus' sleigh and the reindeer, and you're looking over at the fireplace if you had one. And you know, you're getting up in the morning, seeing if Santa Claus left the gifts there and stuff. Of course, my parents were always great at that. We never doubted it until somebody come along and said, look, Santa Claus is not real. It's like, what? There's some people walking by, so I can't use the words I want to use right now, but you know what I mean. You're like, what? F you. What do you mean Santa Claus is? So it's like that experience you're going through when you're first coming into the Meyer case, and it's about religion, it's about politics, or it's even about science, or it's about philosophy or whatever, and you're studying that and you're hearing that, and you're like, you listen, especially if you listen to Michael Horn on alternative Christian radio, like way back when, like 2005 for example. And suddenly you're like, Man, that makes me very angry. I've been lied to. There's so much lies about this, about that, about the other. One of the number one problems that the play on the extraterrestrial human beings talk about, according to this case, according to what they write or say, is that human beings, first of all, it's lack of taking self-responsibility. The second of all is how much we lie to ourselves and each other, I think, if I've understood it right. And another thing is how much we you know, like put other human beings up on a pedestal and then just don't think about nothing, because we're all like, oh, it's like the American football team. You're either for this football team or you're not. And if you're not on our team, well, then you can go screw yourself, you know. And that's how Americans treat it. They get paid millions and millions of dollars and get all the best, you know, contracts and commercial contracts and payments, and get treated like, and worshipped. And that's where they really don't understand us, because, you know, instead of thinking for ourselves, doing our own research, developing our ability to independently think, analyze, and observe, and instead of just giving a, you know, a political leader or a religious leader or a sports star or a Hollywood celebrity or whoever, whatever, just a free pass, and then don't do any of our own thinking, our own research, that's one of the weak points that we have. It's an illusion, lying to ourselves and lying to other people too, putting other people on a pedestal or worshiping other people, putting other people above ourselves instead of equality, true, honest, authentic equality, and self-responsibility, if I've understood it right. And one of the things I got out of the Goblet of Truth, I haven't read the whole thing, but I've read parts of it, and one of the things I got out of that in summation is that a lot of human conflict and human error comes from misunderstandings. It's really, and some people, I know you can question, it's especially easy to take advantage of misunderstandings when your intentions aren't good, when your heart isn't good, you know, when your thoughts aren't pure or positive or with good intentions or whatever. It's very easy to misuse misunderstandings or to fake or play off misunderstandings. I understand that very, very well when I go into one culture into another, one nation or one society into another. But it is the one of the biggest things I walked away from my initial study of the Goblet of Truth. I'm not done with it. The Goblet of Truth was a great cause of conflict and error on the planet, is human to human misunderstanding. You know, and communication, clear, honest, sincere, attentive, thoughtful, and I guess I should say responsible and respectful. And I'm not always the strongest and perfect example of that either at all. But these things are what I've come away from the initial reading into the Goblet of Truth about, is that misunderstanding continues to be and will continue to be for some time for some people that don't get a handle on that. Misunderstanding, one of the biggest causes of human error, human conflict. Misunderstanding, or lack of understanding. We could translate it this way too, right? It's a question, and I'm not saying that I know the answer, but lack of understanding, lack of communication, misunderstanding, all these things kind of tie into the same. So, you know, going there like I did in my world travels, that was one of the most important things. And that's why I have 7,000 views on the Silent Revolution of Truth, and somebody else has taken it, brightened it up, added color to it, or light, or whatever, exposure, and republished it on their YouTube channel, which is fine, you know, but